Okay, so this is Philobusker number 3, part B, Muddy Creation. So, ask yourself, how is muddy created? Most people really have no clue. I noticed that there were interviews during the Occupy movement, but when people were asked about how muddy is created, they generally think, oh, well, maybe the government creates it, or money's based on gold, and both of these are true, but only partly. Ultimately, there are 3 ways that we're going to get into in how money is created in the world. Now, muddy, if you hear, I'm not saying muddy, M-U-D-D-Y, although muddy is acting like muddy. Muddy is anything that is a accepted medium of exchange. So, throughout history, the earlier mediums of exchange were often barter related. You would trade your barley for my chickens or my labor. And then eventually, as economies started to grow, barter systems between city-states and nations, we're talking back into the times of the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and the Chinese, the ancient ones. Eventually, as trade started to develop, people had to figure out how you measured how much barley for how many chickens. So you started to get at different weights and measures. And at the same time in this process, precious metals started to become used as mediums exchanged as well. So gold and silver have always had their day of exchange. Now, one of the things with precious metals is that they're rare. So the old saying that he who has the gold makes the rules is largely true throughout history, because gold and silver became the standard of money, and how much money you had based on how much gold and silver you had. These are based on certain weights and measurements of gold or silver. Now, like we're saying, throughout history, people have been paid in all kinds of things. The word soldier comes from the word salt, because that's how the soldiers were often paid, in terms of salt. Back when Canada was first forming, then under New France, some of the colonists, the French colonists, there was no use of there was no precious metals available. So they would take playing cards and certify them with a stamp of a certain amount of money and some particular French authority, but you'd be able to pass that around to get goods, different foods, and be able to pay off bills and taxation that way. So, the original way for money to be created was for several people to agree on what the format was. Throughout history, you've had shells, food, precious metals, all kinds of things. It didn't matter. If you agree on it and I agree on it, we've come to a medium of exchange. That's money. So, that's part of the way it's happened. Now, the second major way, and this is where, in Canada's Constitution, for example, and the United States Constitution, it was governments who had the right to create money. It's in our Constitution to create coinage and currency, public debt, to decide what kind of interest is going to be paid, if any, and how it would be paid off. But the good standing of government and the ability of the nation to pay off its own debts gave it the right to issue currency for itself. So, back when our Constitution was being formed, with John A. Macdonald, the leaders of Upper and Lower Canada, they saw what was happening in Europe, as well as in the United States. The bankers throughout Europe have always tried to control the currency. The famous saying by Mayor Rothschild, "You give me control of currency, I care not who makes the laws." That's the process. Control the currency, control the world, control that country. So, the founders of Canada, the founders of the United States, knew that the bankers wanted to control the currency, to be able to issue the money. So it was written into our Constitution that the government creates the money. And we did that. They decided how much money would be issued and to what services would be worked on. There was money being created by some of the other banking structures that were around at the time, but those were very small amounts. The government also allows the incorporation of banks. That disallows the incorporation of banks as well. But the power to control the currency, to issue the money into circulation, to pay it back through normal taxation, without charging interest to yourself, has been the history of early Canada, the early United States. That's how you dealt with your own growth of a nation. That's how you build a strong nation. No sane human being would issue money to themselves at interest, or at accumulating interest. And yet this is the process that the bankers wanted to take over, and eventually did take over in Canada and the United States, which was to get the issuance of currency put into their private hands, lend us back our own money at interest. And we'll get into this issue later, but the fact is, Canada's present national debt is $550-odd billion. 90%, 500-ish billion, is interest owed to the bankers for money that we allowed them to have, that they lent back to us at accumulating interest. It's usury, it's criminal. Throughout most of history in Christian and Muslim worlds, usury like that is punishable by death. We might want to look at that in this central banking world we've got going on here. That's a topic for a later filibuster. The third way that money is often created, aside from being actually backed by gold and silver or some sort of precious metal, or government backed, is money created as debt. Money created out of thin air. A bank, you borrow $10,000 from your bank just types in $10,000 into your account. Out of thin air, came out of nowhere, and now you're paying interest on that money. Now, fiat currency, which is backed by nothing, fiat means let it be done. So it's some sort of legal tender, which is really what's on our dollars nowadays. Legal tender that just is backed by nothing but the good word of the government, which is not good word anyway. But the banker as money as debt is something that you need to look into, that we can go into as these filibusters unfold. But they're filmed by Paul Grignon, called Money as Debt. Bill Stills did The Moneymakers. Zeitgeist went into it, as well as Thrive, a recent film by Foster Gamble. Looks deeply into banking history and how we need to take, first of all, have an understanding of how money is created, how money now is used as a control mechanism. It's not backed by anything. They're pumping out trillions of dollars of nothing, thin air. And you might wonder, how did they get the right to issue this money? It used to be the right was given to them by the government. Now it's been taken over by the bankers. And you need to be able to wonder, how are we going to get control of this again? How has our global economy become so dangerously close to collapse? And what is the solution to that? These are going to be the next filibusters that we're going to be talking about. So get ready for Philobusker3C. Bye-bye.